1913 was the year of the World Exhibition in Ghent. London, on the other hand, was said to be a permanent World's Fair. It was the most populous city in the world at that time, inhabited by people from all over the world. A guide remarked that there were more Irish in London than in Dublin, more Scots than in Aberdeen, more Jews than in Palestine, and more Catholics than in Rome. Over 7 million people were living in London in 1913, a number that would only increase in the years coming. London was not only the most populous city, it was also the capital of the largest empire the world had ever seen. The man who ruled over this enormous empire was King George V. The pound sterling, with his image on it, was used in all parts of his realm, and therefore all over the world. The gateway to this world was the Thames. The river connected London to the sea and was an important harbour. The different colonies and dominions of the empire had their own agencies in London. On this picture you can see Australia House. Here all the Australian agencies were gathered in one building. It is clear that London was one of the world's most important places at the time, but it was not clear what was the most important place within London. According to an Australian artist, it was Trafalgar Square, which you can see on the picture on the left. On the other hand, a Danish artist thought it was the city of London, which is only a square mile in the heart of London and the centre of finance. Although London was a modern city, women were not allowed to vote. Suffragettes were women who held demonstrations in order to obtain these voting rights. The leader of this movement was Mrs. Pankhurst, but it was a Mrs. Davidson who threw herself under the King's horse during a derby for the cause of women's votes.
In 1913, Britain still had many colonies, such as Egypt and India, but also other countries that were colonies of Britain. And these colonies had a great influence on London. Many luxury goods, such as cinnamon and other spices, but also fur, came from those colonies. And those goods actually enriched the city of London and the daily lives of the people living there. They came in touch with goods that they had never seen before. A lot of wealthy people who lived in those colonies came to London to study and become doctors or lawyers. They could study at these Ivy League universities, and therefore London was very multicultural even back then, because today we still look at London as being multicultural. A lot of political decisions were made in London, and those decisions also affected Asia and Africa. Since the colonies were not yet independent in 1913, the empire was still a habit of mind to the Londoners, and a lot of decisions they made in London were made to maintain peace among those colonies and among different countries. So London had a very, very important role back then.
Wendy has just told us that Britain had many colonies. Because of this multitude of colonies, London had become the trading capital of the world, and in the eyes of many, the economical capital of the world. This role led to great prosperity for the lucky few. But there was a flip side to this. While London had become the largest and most important trade city, Britain started to lag behind in industry. Britain still exported many goods from its colonies, but its industry wasn't growing nearly as fast anymore as that of many other countries. Britain was obliged to take on the role of a banker and trader. This led to the city's influence being outsized, undermining any clear-sighted economical strategy and weaving the money and taste of the nouveau riche into the fabric of the nation. The best example of this was the Marconi scandal. In 1913, the electrical engineer Marconi had transmitted a wireless signal across the Atlantic Ocean. He had founded a company and was talking with the government about a contract. This new technology could be used to communicate with the entire empire. These meetings about the contract were supposed to be secret, but multiple ministers misused this information and bought stocks of the company, hoping to make a lot of money out of it.
Let's also take a minute to talk about the working man. London was a city that expanded without forethought, resulting in a lack of structure in the city. Consequently, it might not have been the best place to live, since of the 7 million people populating London, only 20,000 lived in the square mile of the city. On top of that, 20 times that number worked in that square mile of the city, resulting in a constant stream of people from 6 a.m. in the morning up till 4 p.m. in the afternoon. But enough talk about money and work-related topics. Let's move on to another key event. For in the summer of 1913, London prepared itself for a state visit from Raymond Poincaré, the President of France. Remarkably, after being rivals on the battlefield for years, President Poincaré was welcomed with open arms by the British people and their King George V. Poincaré visited many sites in London and concluded his visit by addressing the people of Britain. With this message, he left behind a positive impression of himself and his nation on both King George and his people. Perhaps without this visit, Britain would have never have sided with France once the war broke out. Thank you all for watching this video, and we hope you learned something new.